Hi friends, it's Mr. Alex from Adams Memorial Library, and I'm back with another fun seasonal themed craft. For the month of January, since it's just started snowing, I thought that this would be a great opportunity to make a winter tree with some bubble wrap snow, and I'm going to show you exactly how to do that. In order to follow along, you're going to want to stop right here, either in the children's room or our curbside pickup, to get your very own craft kit. And if you can't stop in, that's okay too. You can always follow along using supplies at home. Now, there are just a few things that we're going to need before we begin painting, and I'll show you what those are. In order to make our bubble wrap tree, we are going to need just a few things, some of which you're going to find in your craft kit and some of which you'll find at home. In your craft kit, you're going to find your tree pattern, and you don't have to use this pattern. If you feel like you can draw a tree that you would really like to use for this craft, you are more than welcome to draw it yourself, but the pattern is just here to provide some guidance. You should have a blue sheet of paper, some bubble wrap, some white paint, some black paint, and a paintbrush that looks something like this. Now, in addition from home, you may also want to grab any different brushes that you want to use. For instance, I really like using these daubers here. You may want some scissors and something to write or draw with. So go ahead, gather all of that up, and then we'll get started. The first step in making our bubble wrap tree is that we're going to take our tree and draw it on our paper. Now, as I mentioned in the supplies section of this video, you can draw your own tree. However, I really liked this one that I found a pattern for. So I went and I cut the pattern out and traced it right onto my cardstock using something to write with at home. Now, once we have this done, the next step is going to be to take our brushes and paint in our tree that we traced or drew and make it black. Now, there's a couple of different ways that we can do that. Like I said, happen to have these thicker sponge daubers that I really like to use, or you can use the brush in your kit. They both have different advantages depending on whether you want super wide lines or super thin lines, and it is entirely up to you as a painter what you want to use for your tree. But at the end of the day, we're going to take our black paint and fill in our tree outline. So let's go ahead and do that. Now I've taken and I've applied my black paint to my tree outline. And something that I didn't mention before is that I am using a paper plate to protect my paint and my brushes from our tablecloth. Now, as you're painting, you may want to put even additional layers of protection down. So for instance, if you have any newspaper or plastic, you may want to put that under your workspace to keep your table nice and neat. But now that I have our black tree painted, we are going to let this dry and we are going to get ready to paint our snow scene. So in order to do that, we'll need our white paint at the ready. We'll need a brush, depending on what type we want to use, ready. And we're going to need our bubble wrap. So go ahead and get all of that, and then we will start with our snowy scene. And now that we have let our black paint dry, it's time to paint our snowy scene. So we're going to take our brush, and the first thing that I did is to mark where I wanted the snow on the bottom of my paper. I just took my pen or pencil and I went ahead and drew a rough line of where I want my snow to be. Then we may want to take a piece of paper or something else to lay at the edges of our paper, again, just to catch any paint from going onto our table. And so at this point, we're going to take our other brush, we're going to take our white paint, and we're going to apply it to our snow scene at the bottom of the paper. Once we've applied our white paint to the bottom of our snow scene, like this, then we're going to go ahead and let that dry for a little bit. Now, something that you may want to keep in mind is that you will have some trouble getting good coverage with your white paint on a darker sheet of paper like this. So you can sort of see in mind that there are areas where the blue still shows through. So once that dries a little bit, it might be a good idea to take your brush and reapply another coat of the white paint to your project. But however you want your project to look is perfectly fine. So we're going to let this dry and we're going to come back for our final step, which is using our bubble wrap. And now that our project is dry again, it is time for the last step of our painting, adding the snow using bubble wrap. And I think that this is the most fun. Now, there are a couple of different ways that you can add your snow. You can take this bigger sheet that's about the size of your paper, apply paint to the whole thing, and just drop it right on like a stamp, and then press down, which is what I'm going to do because I think that this looks the best and I like to apply it this way. But you might think differently. You might want to apply snow to only certain parts of your project. And if you do that, I recommend either cutting up your bigger sheet or taking a smaller piece of bubble wrap that you might have at home from a package, and then just painting smaller sections and applying them selectively like stamps throughout your project. Either is fine, and either is going to make a wonderful bubble wrap tree. Now, I'm going to take my larger piece, because like I said, I want to apply all of my snow in one go. And then I'm going to take my white paint and my dauber again, or paintbrush, whatever you're going to use. And I'm going to apply the white paint onto my bubble wrap like a stamp. Keep in mind that you don't want to apply it too thick. You don't want it to be dripping off of the bubble wrap because then it's going to make a mess on your project. You also don't want to apply it too thin because then otherwise you may not get good coverage on some of the areas of your project. So we're going to take our paint and we're going to apply that now. Now, once we have our paint applied to our bubble wrap, just like this, all we're going to do is, as I said, use it as a stamp and flip it right over onto our project. So we'll go ahead and flip it face down, just like this, onto our project. Once we have it somewhere that we like it, we're going to go ahead and just press onto our bubble wrap like a stamp. Now, there are a couple of different ways that you can do this. Again, as I mentioned, you can use the different sizes of pieces of bubble wrap because when you do it like this, as you'll see, it's going to come up in a bit of a square. Also, if you're having trouble manipulating the bubble wrap, you can also take a piece of cardboard or cardstock and tape it to the back of your bubble wrap to make it a little bit easier to work with. But after we've pressed down on our bubble wrap, we're going to go ahead and lift up just like this. And what's left is a snowy scene on top of our tree. Now, at this point, if there are any areas that we want to touch up, again, this kind of looks like a perfect square, so maybe I want mine to be a little more freeform and I take some smaller pieces and fill in these gaps. Maybe there's an area where I didn't apply quite enough paint and I want to add more bubbles, I can do that as well. But I think this looks pretty good, so we're going to call this done and go ahead and let it dry one last time. And at this point, our bubble wrap winter tree will be complete. I want to thank everybody who joined me today as we made our winter tree bubble wrap crafts. And don't forget that I'd like to see how your craft turned out. So be sure to send those pictures on over to us at kids@adamslib.org. And be sure to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube for updates not only about other crafts that we're doing, but all the other great programs here at the library. And as always, happy crafting, everybody.